Welcome to this episode of Ask the Professor. I'm your host, Ron Tulley, Dean for the College of Arts, Humanities, and Social Sciences, and Professor of English here at UF. Ask the Professor is a series I started to help our students and the greater community get to know our professors a bit better. In this hour format, we'll learn about their vocational passions, what they love to teach, ongoing research, service, scholarship, and/or creative projects. And hopefully, when we're finished, we have a better understanding of their field, their typical workday, and of course, who they are and what motivates them. Today, we are honored to have Alex Davis. Hey, Alex.
How you doing, Dean Tulley?
Alex is the newest member of our communication department here at UF. He's originally from Dayton and completed his bachelor's and master's in media and communication at Bowling Green State University, where he's currently finishing his doctorate with an emphasis in the study of social movement. I foresee a question coming on that. As faculty advisor of our campus radio station, WLFC 88.3, he is able to put his 13 years of broadcast experience to use in facilitating the growth and knowledge of our students and our staff. While still new to the UF community, he looks to continue aiding in the already service-based campus, and he has quite a tradition of that. Alex resides here in Findlay with his son, Miles. So welcome, Alex.
Thank you, Dean Tulley. I appreciate the opportunity, and thank you for having me.
Absolutely, and welcome again to UF.
Yes.
So you've had some interesting experiences as a DJ and as a station programmer. Maybe you could tell us or tell the students what it means to work in radio today when we have so many options like Spotify, Pandora, Amazon, Apple Music.
No, great question. Thank you. And as we've discussed before, radio is an ever-evolving field, and we've seen a lot of transition, especially over the course of the past 2 to 3 years. Radio today is different than it was in 1990, 1980, even 2000. But that doesn't mean that it's not a beautiful medium. I think radio is one of those things that will always be around as long as we have some type of frequency, some type of FM or AM dial. It's also a free medium. To the most part, radio today is different in the aspect that while it's should remain and it does remain live and local with the internet. In the internet, we are able to not only remain live and local, but access global populations. And so now radio talent and programmers are forced to create digital content. And I say forced, but you should be creating digital content. And so while we can be live and local and we can work and teach on that, we can also teach on ideas of content creation, branding, marketing regarding media that you produce, whether it be a podcast or whether you are doing a radio show, or maybe you like to do an interview series, i.e. Ask the Professor, which is that's the content that I watch, to be honest. I'm a visual podcast interview viewer. That's what I like, and I think a lot of people do like that. I hope so. But nonetheless, I think that's where radio is at today, and I think there's still plenty of opportunities for growth in radio, not only to remain and stay in radio, but to utilize radio to get to other avenues of digital media, journalism, television broadcast, your own content creation from your home studio, whatever it may be.
So obviously a lot of our students, I'm sorry.
No, you're good. You're good. I was getting ready to cut it off anyway.
Yeah. A lot of our students that do things in the arts per se come from other disciplines. So how do you, what's kind of your elevator speech for a student, let's say a student studying pharmacy? What would you tell them in terms of how to get involved with WLFC? Why would they want to get involved with WLFC?
I love it. I love the question, because that's something that I've had to develop over the course of the last 12 weeks. What is my elevator speech to individuals that are not in the communication field already? And part of it is during my own classes, I hear voices and you recognize just enthusiasm or personality. And some of these things are not things that can be taught. You either, have just a boisterous personality or outgoing, and not that you have to be in radio, right? But some things are noticeable, like, okay, this would be a perfect person to get on board. And so while so-and-so may be a pharmacy major or an education major or pre-vet, or I hear this personality, and you know what, we have this opportunity here on campus, 88.3 WLFC, and it's not only geared. It's not only geared or specifically geared towards communication majors. It's open to everyone. And while we're an indie music station, for the most part, you can discuss whatever you'd like to on the radio. You can play. We have being that we are indie, we have a wide library of music to choose from. So if you don't like this, you may like this. You can pick from over here, pull from over here, restructure your hour, 2 hours, 3 hour show, however you'd like. And that's kind of my elevator speech, is that we're open and available to whatever you would like to do. And we'll also facilitate you and help you grow as far as working on your voice or how you prefer to format your show, and guide you through that process. And so I think there's individuals that do pursue digital media. Beautiful. I love it. I was one of those individuals. Of course, we're around a lot of those individuals, but those that just because they're not innately pursuing it or already involved doesn't mean that they wouldn't be great for it or that they wouldn't love it. And so what I'm finding as we continue to recruit and get student staff involved is that, they really love it. They just didn't know they loved it because they weren't already involved. And so just about building up and then helping grow and show what opportunities are available that they didn't know. And so now I'm finding, okay, there is a love here. They just didn't know the love existed because they weren't already involved.
I like the way you phrase that. I think a lot of times it's just about making those connections, right? You might have students just walk by the studio now in our new location where they can actually see it. It's not hidden away anymore. Hopefully that spurs some conversations with people where they're like, I never really thought about that, or I might not have thought I had the talents for that, but that sort of interests me, and maybe I'll go in and check it out.
Most definitely. And that's what I've been telling a lot of our student staff is the more you're in here, the more individuals are going to see and wonder what you're doing in here, how you got in here. And they may just be inquisitive and just want to watch. You may just be entertaining on your own, just being in this glass bubble, right? Sometimes I have to remember that, I'm in here, but I'm also visible.
Right.
So I'm on my phone or I'm talking to myself, right? Okay. They just saw me. Okay. But you're here. So embrace it, enjoy it, and realize that no matter what, if someone's walking by, you will be the center of attention. And some people love that and embrace it. Others, it takes time, but it's a positive thing. So center of attention in a great way. And so the new location is amazing. We have foot traffic on the daily, a lot of passerbyers. And I catch myself working in our production studio or just doing stuff around the area. And there's a lounge outside, right directly outside of the station. And so a lot of students utilize the AMU in that space specifically to as quiet space to study or work. And I notice a lot of eyes that go up every few moments, like, what are they doing in there? And so you can kind of tell they're okay, that looks cool. At least I hope that's what they're thinking. But yeah, so no, the location is amazing. Love the location.
And I know that the students won't have time to see this because the premiere for this episode probably won't come out until Monday of next week. But tomorrow is actually our ribbon cutting for the new studio space at 4:00. So unfortunately, we won't get the message out through this media, but we'll get it out in other ways. And I expect a good turnout for that. The other thing that I want to give students kind of a heads up, and I think you're aware of this, is that space it's still evolving. While the station itself, most of the structural work is done. One of the hopes we have is to add kind of a semicircular stage in the other corner of that room, which used to be known as the Oiler Mart. So we can have live music there too. And you and our other DJs, student DJs, can interview artists on the spot, maybe while they're performing. I'm pretty excited about the possibilities with that.
No, most definitely. That's kind of where my eyes have been too, in my vision and thought process is how we can engage community, whether artists or campus members or community members in general. One of my big things, and this goes back to your first question about where radio lives today, is that a lot of things, when we say them on the radio or do our show, they go over the airwaves, and that's that. You can record your show, right? So, which is great. But if you just say it over the radio and don't do anything, it's gone. And so what I've been trying to teach our students is record your show, record the entire show if you want. And then when you do have individuals come in for interviews or you do segments or bits, whether they're funny or whatever, maybe you're doing a movie review or a shoe review, whatever interests you, record it visually. We'll put it on the YouTube, and so that your radio content doesn't get forgotten on the airwaves. Now it lives forever on the internet, and so that's what we're working on now. And so you just kind of reiterated that with doing the interviews and having artists involved. And so I think that's a beautiful opportunity that we present as well.
Yeah, I guess that's the good and the bad of the world we live in now, right? Everything is recorded, whether you want it to be or not.
Whether you want it to be or not.
Right. And certainly, as you point out, it's great when you're learning, particularly if, I tend to not have a lot of ego when I'm making mistakes. And I always encourage students to kind of let go of their ego and just listen openly, so you can improve. But yeah, that's an advantage that today's DJs have that we just didn't have back in the day. So that's a great point.
Yes.
So obviously, like all of our professors here, you wear a number of hats, and radio is one of your loves, but you've got a lot of other things you're doing. Why don't you tell us about what you like to teach and why? What courses, what topics, what do you like to teach?
So I'm currently teaching Principles of Speech. Next semester, I will be teaching Intro to Digital Media. I love production courses. Obviously, that's kind of goes hand in hand with radio and whatnot. I love audio production, video production, but I'm also, as you mentioned at the beginning, I don't want to say pretty well versed because I'm advisors and committee members that are way versed than me, but my emphasis of study in my current program is social movement study. And so social movement theory, new social movement theory. I look at old theories as well, resource mobilization, and so on and so forth. But a lot of social movement study, also a very rhetorically critical scholar. So I look at a lot of not necessarily texts, but text-based media. So I like to analyze albums, musical works, do content analysis of perhaps musical productions, whether it's a play or a music video, so on and so forth. I'm a big hip hop head, so I do a lot of review work based on different songs or albums and things that are released in the musical world, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. And, I would add my plug here as a rhetorician to your point about text. The text can be anything. It can be a web text. It can be a literal printed text. It can be an audio recording. So absolutely, that's all fair game out there. Good to know. Social movements. Obviously, I have my own preconceived notions. I'm sure a lot of our audience does, but I'd like to hear kind of an operational definition from you and what that means in terms of your research.
So I'm not as prepared for this question as I would like to be. I'm currently working on, so my dissertation study, part of it revolves around looking at the artist as a social movement. Nowadays, more than ever, I think, especially with independent artists, goes hand in hand with 88.3 right here, but they create their own brand, and they have the ability to, right, with all the resources that we do now have, but they create their own brand, their clothing, their merchandise, their music is a part of their brand. There's not a necessarily as big of a involvement from a major corporate record label. If you are an indie artist, you kind of do that yourself. And not to say that an artist on a major label wouldn't be the social movement in their own right. But I think all of these things together, brand, music, commodity, can combine to turn the artist into a social movement. I mean, it takes more than that, right? You have to be consistent and it takes time. But I'm looking at the artist as a social movement. And so that's kind of where I'm branching out into. I'm not as there yet, still in the dissertation phase, but when I get finalized, the goal is to have an end-all definition and possible hybrid theory between CRT and new social movement theory, or that's kind of where I'm at right now, but that's the goal.
That's interesting. Yeah. And that I'm glad you kind of expounded upon that, because that's not where I would have gone with it. But I could certainly see certain artists today, somebody like Kanye comes to mind immediately. I mean, his presence, the way he's branded himself, he's kind of a moving target. And I know, there's a lot of course, disparaging things about him too in the media, but I've always kind of admired the way somebody like that has tried to control and evolve their image as more than simply an artist.
Yes, no, definitely. And just to kind of clarify, while I'm looking at the artist as a social movement, the more broad aspect, it doesn't have to pertain to an artist, is I'm looking at the individual as a social movement as well. So the artist was just more of a specificity, but
Okay.
I think the same applies. Individual artists, they are an individual. So that's kind of where I was at. But no, everything you said is right where my head is at for sure.
Right. And I can see some, you and I were talking off camera yesterday about some of the, some of the groups that I grew up with and some of the, hip hop influences that you were interested in. And I think particularly you mentioned CRT and comparisons there. Thinking about an artist like Public Enemy, to me, seems obvious in terms of the influence they had on later hip hop artists,
Yes.
and particularly in African-American movements. But
Yes.
I mean, that resonates.
Definitely. No, I appreciate your comments and any knowledge that you do have to offer, Dean Tulley. I will take
as dated as it is.
Not at all.
Yeah. So we need young professors, folks, like Alex out there, not old guys like me. So so I get a little bit of your research here, a little bit of your teaching. Maybe you could share with us. I'm sure the students want to understand this. Service is a big part of what you do, and you said that was one of the attractive elements about UF is our tradition with service. So how do you, particularly when you're working one-on-one, you said that you like to educate in terms of audio programming. How do you coach or mentor a student? How do you build on improvements you see in the person's knowledge and skills, and maybe how do you address those mistakes one-on-one with that student?
No, that's a great question. These are all great questions. So first, I like to provide examples of work. Depends on what we're working on, obviously, but whether it's vocals or visual, I like to provide an example of a finished product. So you can see, okay, at least in my opinion, but this looks good. Now the question is, how do we get there? Or this sounds good. How do we get there? And so sometimes I'll use my own voice. Sometimes I'll use friends in industry or radio broadcasts or television as examples that I think are fairly solid. And then we'll start working towards that. So I'm working with a couple students now, specifically on their voice. And I also play some very early examples of my own voice to let them hear, okay, you hear this, but then 10 years ago, this was my voice. And it sounded ridiculous. It sounded horrible. And so guide them through the process of slowing down, articulating, enunciating, pronouncing words differently. Sometimes in radio, there's what we call, or maybe not what we call, but it's something I'm throwing in there. Sometimes you have to put a little bit of cheese on something to get your point across, or emphasis, if you will, which doesn't always involve cheese. But and so working on vocal ability, range, capability, pronunciation, starting there, and then getting those thoughts in their mind. Now they're hearing things differently, listening to things differently, seeing things differently. And so now it creates kind of more of an urge or a want to, okay, I need to work on my voice. And I always want them to work with their voice too, because for me, it was always, I can add to my catalog if I'm using my voice, my own voice, right? For what job purposes, further employment. Not only did I edit this, but I also use my own voice, and now it's part of my end-all catalog. And so we start there. They work with their voice. We edit, for the most part, audio-wise, use Adobe Audition, but we can branch out to other programs as well. And they continue to work with their own voice. We get familiar with the software, a couple training sessions, and then I let them have at it and check in every couple weeks. How is this? Any help here? Let's hear how you sound. And so we do what we call air checks, not only with on air, but also with production in general. Okay, this sounds great. Wow. Remember how you sounded 2 weeks ago? And it's usually like a laugh there. Like, I can't believe I sounded like this now, because now I sound like this, or now I edit this way. It took me 10 minutes to do this. Last week, it took me an hour and a half. And so just to see that growth and progress, that's kind of how I lay it out for them. And the same would go for any visual editing as well. Whether they're on camera or someone else is, but I like to do stuff with them on camera so they can see themselves. Okay, we can work on posture, we can work on presence, we can work on hand gestures, which goes hand in hand with like a principles of speech course here at UF. Because now we're working on those movements or those vocal techniques. And now you see yourself, and now you may laugh or like, oh, I hate that, or you become very critical of yourself once you see yourself on camera. But then the next time, you're like, I don't want to do that, or I like this, I'm going to do this again. And so now you're liking yourself more and more on camera, more and more through speakers because you're working on it. And so that's what I love. And so far, in the past 12 weeks, I've seen a lot of growth in our student staff, and also just in students in classrooms in general. So yeah, I've seen a lot of positive outcome, nothing bad at all.
You're making me, it's been a long time since I taught principles of speech, but when I would do it, I would always look for orators that had certain tics,
Yes.
or certain elements about them that were unique, but also I felt we're able to use things like pregnant pauses, gestures at certain point for emphasis. And I realized that the nonverbals aren't as big of a deal in pure radio, but if you're doing even podcasts like this, gesturing is certainly part of that. And I would use examples like, obviously Martin Luther King, Bill Clinton, folks like that were obvious politicians that you could go anywhere and get clips of. But thinking about your experience in radio, are there specific DJs that you direct them to say, hey, listen to this guy or listen to this woman, how she does things?
I could. Let me condense myself here because I could talk about this for years. But no, for sure, most definitely. There's a couple, what I would say, in the big leagues and a couple in the minor leagues, if you will, analogy wise. And I usually start in the minors because I like to. These guys, sometimes they do it better than the big leagues, right? And so a couple would be like a Tino Cucino, who was a self-syndicated radio talent, currently based out of Phoenix and LA, kind of between there. And he started out at a fairly corporate station, I believe, but at one station. And now he's self-syndicated to where he's, I don't know the exact number, but definitely over 50 stations across the nation. And that's without any major corporate backing. So I use him delivery wise. He does a lot of content creation. And so I think the students are able to see, okay, this is great. He's radio. Oh, this is radio too. And it's all radio. Radio is no longer just on air. Radio is all of these things, having your own podcast, having your own visual interview series, taking photo shoots. Perhaps you're doing parodies of different songs. Radio is all of that. So I use Tino Cucino, a guy named Mr. Peter Parker, who's currently based out of Minneapolis. I use him for vocal delivery. He has a very strong presence with his vocals, and he also uses his hands. There's a guy who's been around for ages out of New York, Broadway Bill Lee, and he still to this day will put up Facebook posts through he has a fan page. I mean, Broadway Bill Lee is huge. He's big leagues of the big leagues, but he'll do a break for like a minute long, and it's just flowing. And he takes it back to old radio where he's kind of throwing some rhymes in there and there's a little bit of cheese, but he's Broadway Bill Lee, so he can do this. Nonetheless, you hear and see everything he's doing. And so it provides a real-time example. Oh, wow. Not only is he smiling the entire time, but while he's talking, he's using these gestures. And so when I use someone like Broadway Bill Lee, the point is that when you're recording a commercial or when you're in the studio, whether by yourself or with others, talk how you would talk in a regular conversation. And so you wouldn't have your hands tied behind your back when you're talking with one of your friends, right? You would do this and whatnot. And so, because that emphasizes not only the point you're trying to get across to them in person, but also that's going to affect how you speak vocally or how you speak on the radio. The other big characteristic that we work on is smiling while you talk, whether you're producing a commercial or on air, provided it's a happy topic to smile about, right? But people can hear smiles, whether it's through if we didn't have the visual right here in Zoom and we were both just had our names popped up, I could hear whether or not you were smiling and vice versa. And so the more I'm pretty sure maybe people don't think about that all the time, but I think I think you can hear it. I hear it in a commercial, whether a student is just reading it, like put a smile on. We play both versions back. They're like, oh, wow. No, I definitely sound more inviting and more welcoming, which is the goal of a commercial. So, but those are long story long. Those are a couple of the individuals that I utilize to get those points across for sure.
Great. And psychologically, I think there's evidence to what you say. It's definitely from a speaker's perspective. When you smile, it literally affects your brain in terms of sending those signals emotionally to change your feelings. So, there's some truth to the notion that even if you're not feeling well, smiling does affect your demeanor. And I think you're right. You can't hear it in the voice.
I'll take it. I didn't have the reference point, so I'm agreeing with everything you say for sure.
So I'm going to kick the can down the road a lot. I know you're a newbie. You've got a lot on your plate. You're a young father, young son. You're trying to finish up your doctorate. You're hustling, man. You got a lot on your plate. But I want you to think down the road, because Findlay is a place that I think, what makes it attractive to students is they really get to know their professors. They get that one-on-one relationship. So let's talk about Alex, 10, 20 years down the line at UF. What do you want your legacy to be with your students?
Wow. Got amazing questions, thought-provoking questions. As cliche as this may sound, I want to remain in the UF mindset, service providing, whether that is individually one-on-one, whether it's group service through teaching a course, or radio backing. I think about the students that we do have here at 88.3 WLFC, whether they go into radio or not. I would love for them 10, 11, 12 years from now to think back, oh, I loved working at 88.3 WLFC. Remember, Alex told us this. Oh, wow, I'm using this now. Oh, this is crazy. Or maybe one of them does go down the broadcast, into the broadcast field that wasn't in the broadcast field before. And that would be amazing. But just for the students to be able to look back on their time at the station, reflect that they had fun. They tried something different, which, see in the back. I know it's back.
Yeah, right.
Now, but that was not intended. But they tried something different, something new, got out of their comfort zone, and that Findlay UF provided this opportunity to them, and that they enjoyed their time in this space. I catch myself in the station working, and I go home. I'm like, I just enjoy being in the station atmosphere. It's become, even in the short time we've been in this space, it's become kind of like a home. Like you step into it, I'm comfortable as can be. And the same goes for the classroom. And I want students that have participated in a course that I've taught to have the same exact opinion, the same exact thought process. Per se, right, or per instance, right now I'm teaching principles of speech. Oh wow, that class really helped me. Alex made a comfortable culture and environment for our class, and now I'm a much better public speaker. And while I don't want them to attribute that to just the class or their professor, because it comes from them, I want them to hopefully think about that. Okay, this helped, and I would recommend someone else going to UF, or if they already are, specifically taking this course. We have a lot of good speakers already, a lot of talented individuals in our classes. And so a lot of times I just tell them, let's just work on structure. Your voice is there. You sound good. You're confident. You're comfortable. You smile. Your eyes are inviting. But I don't think that these are things that they've been told or always been told or have been told. So they get up there and hear that and they blossom. And it's like, it's nothing to do with me. You've already got it. You just didn't recognize that you had it. And so I just would love students to look back on it. This is a great time. For me, 10, 20 years from now here at UF, I just would love to continue providing service. I think about David in Helping Hands Food Drive, or someone like Dave Imsweller, who just provides service nonstop. And I would like to follow in those kind of footsteps. My chair, Dr. Montague, I think a lot of individuals may see professors as, okay, they teach, they grade, and they're done. But as you said, especially here at UF, people wear many different hats. And so I ask her a million questions a day. And I really honestly try not to. But then I also just pick her brain. I know I'm going to find an answer that's going to help. And I know I'm going to gain a mass amount of knowledge in the span of 10 minutes. And so I see all that she does. And I'm like, you do so much. But I think that's a testament to not only her, but our department and our campus community is that there's service being provided in so many different ways. It doesn't have to be a charity-based drive. It can be. It can be one-on-one. It can be group-based. It can be just providing any type of morale. The smallest thing goes a long way, and I've seen that more than I ever have in the past. 13 weeks now. Wow, we're in week 13. Here at UF, and so my goal is just to embody stuff from those individuals, and hopefully I can provide that same atmosphere to someone in my shoes 20 years from now. Long-winded response. I'm sorry.
No, that's good. That's what we're here for. We're here for the long-winded responses. And it's, again, for our audience, we mentioned the ribbon cutting coming up tomorrow, but this is such an exciting time because you're new, the station's new, we've had this turnover. Most of your colleagues are new. Fong has only been here a couple of years. Megan just got tenure. Kit has only been here a couple of years, coming over from Defiance. So the majority of your department, like you, is young, hungry, has their own vision.
Yes.
So, part of that legacy is, the basic thing I always think of is leaving it better than you found it.
Yes.
One thing, right? And, higher ed, from its traditions, is always about the apprentice and the novice, right? And somewhere along those lines, as you become professor, you trade that role where you're the expert and you're training the novice to replace you. So I always tell people, like, on my door today, it says Office of the Dean. It never said my name. And that's the way it should be, because we're all just renting space.
Wow.
You've got to make that position your own. You got to own it.
Right.
But you also always have to be thinking about, you're just playing a role. Somebody else is going to play it too. You gotta maintain, and that's what service is about.
I love it. No, I love it. I love it all. Love it all. Yes.
So let's keep along. You've talked about your legacy a bit. So let's talk about your students a bit. You're going down a hall and you bump into a group of students and they're talking about you and they're saying good things. What are they saying?
Wow. Where do you come up with these, man?
I borrowed this one.
This is phenomenal too. Well, hopefully they're saying good things. Hopefully I don't give them any other thing to speak about.
Well, just wait. There's another part to the question.
I think they're saying we're able to relate to Alex. There's a good and a bad part about, and I don't know how I look to others physically, but sometimes and I've heard from students that they've asked me my age sometimes, or not sometimes, that throughout the course of the semester they have. And so I think there's a good part about. You tell them? I do tell them. I do. About being able to relate to them, although I'm still about 10, 11 years removed from where they're at in life, age-wise. I think that helps me. Sometimes I think it can be an adverse effect where now I'm too relatable sometimes. But I think that's all just building a positive classroom culture. Guys, I can be cool. I can also be uncool. But I also don't think that isn't necessarily an age thing. I think youth doesn't have a number to it. But I think they're saying he's relatable. We enjoy being in his class. His classroom is open. There's not any type of power trip going on. He just wants us to excel, and they can come in and be themselves in the classroom. And not only will that go for a principles of speech class, but a digital media class as well. Any class, you can come in here and be yourself, and that's the biggest thing. And so I think that's what they're saying. We enjoy being able to be comfortable and open in his classroom without any type of negative attention or feedback or opposition. So I hope that's what they're saying.
Okay. So you preempted me there. You talked about, well, I hope they're saying positive things.
Right.
You keep going down that hall and you turn to the left and there's another group and they're saying, well, they're not saying very nice things about you. What are they saying?
Alex has the worst dad jokes in the world. He's a new dad, and so maybe he's taking a little bit too much time on him. That may be one thing. I am a fast talker. That's always been my biggest negative to vocal ability, whether in a classroom or presentation or broadcast wise, that I do speak fast. And so sometimes I'll tell them, let me know if I need to slow down. But I think probably sometimes I speak a little fast. I don't know that would be something that they're talking about, maybe. No, I don't. And not to say that they're not saying anything bad. I'm not an angel, right? But that's kind of all that comes to mind right now. Maybe Alex is corny. Maybe Alex he's got too much cheese. So I told a joke the other day. But however, I get some good jokes from my students as well. And so I can say the same about them and their dad jokes, whether they're parents or not. What was it? What does a bee use to brush their hair? And I'm not going to force you to answer that detail, but if you do know the answer, for sure. And the answer was a honeycomb. And so I found a great deal of laughter in that. I had some stale faces, like, Alex, just be quiet. Can we get on with class? Although some did laugh too. So, but yeah, hopefully they're not saying anything past that. I think we have a great rapport and continue to build. And yeah, I think that's where I'd be at.
Well, since you like dad jokes, here's one for you. I wore a shirt the other day that had my first letter of my name and the first letter of my last name on it. How do you think people perceive that?
I'm gonna decline to answer. I'm not sure. Okay. I don't know.
Initially, the response was good.
Okay.
So lame. I mean, it's so lame. But so you said that maybe one of the things that you see in yourself or you've heard is that you may speak too quickly. Yes. When you're on the radio, as opposed to being in class or the presentation, what is the way you kind of trick yourself to slow down?
Part of it is, and I don't do this much anymore. I probably still should, as I'm not on the radio here. I've done a couple shows just with students, but I should dial back in just to rework with myself. But providing yourself a comfortable atmosphere, right? And as simple as this may sound, I used to put a physical picture up just because that's when I started. But you could pull a picture on your phone up of your best friend, or maybe one of your parents or a sibling, whoever that person is that you can be your ultimate self around. Put that right in front of you, right there on the board. And every time that you crack the mic, you'll see them. And that's a reminder, although you may be talking to 70,000, 80,000 individuals, I don't want to scare any of the student staff right now. So we'll leave it there. That might be too much. But although you may be talking to that huge amount of individuals, treat it as though you're talking to this one person, your best friend that's in the room. And for me, that was kind of part of it. I mean, although you're comfortable around your best friend or your mom or your dad for the most part, right? It's also one of those things that makes you calm. It should make you calm. And so I'm thinking about them now, and take a deep breath, and it kind of slows me down a little bit. Take a deep breath, stretch, and give yourself time. Sometimes I would get into hurries, and I do so much on the computer or edit wise before the song ends, before I want to crack the mic, that I would pick my headphones up with 10 seconds to go in the song before I was getting ready to talk. And you never know what can happen in 10 seconds. The headphone cord can get tangled. Maybe something on the board just glitched, or the screen just glitched, and anything can go. And so I only gave myself 10 seconds to whereas I needed 60 seconds. And if I would have picked those headphones up with a minute to go, now I can calmly breathe, relax, and focus on the task at hand, which is slowing down, articulating, and delivering the content that I'm delivering in the best way possible to my audience.
Okay. What are some ideas that you have for making the station more accessible to the community?
That's a great question, which is it's top of my brain right now, and haven't quite got there. But I do want everybody to know that we are completely open to the community and individuals that want to be involved. For me, and we mentioned or discussed this at the beginning a little bit, is providing service. And I think that that will be an opening to community involvement more so. One thing that I was able to be involved in one of my past experiences in Las Vegas was a school supplies drive. It was called Backpacks for Class Acts. And so we were able to, much like Helping Hands Food Drive, gather donations from the community, give them to a specific organization who then was able to deliver and provide those to individuals in need. And so I think doing something like that, getting the community involved, will only attract them further to 88.3 WLFC and recruit engagement in a variety of ways. So it doesn't always have to be talent, but it can be partnerships and so on and so forth. And so I think as we get more student staff, get trained, and work on getting community-based events, whether it's a musical production or an open mic or some type of charity-based drive, providing service to the community in those ways, I think will attract community and allow WLFC to blossom even more so within the community. So I think we have to be more inviting, which is something that we're working on, and working on getting those type of situations provided.
Yeah, I put you on the spot there. I realize you're brand new. You're still kind of evolving the station as you evolve into the position. But that's definitely something that I want to work on. I think we do a great job. I should be clear on that already with all the different programs we have. And I don't even think that's the other thing, is getting that information out there.
Yes.
So folks know, hey, we have a bluegrass program. Hey, we have a jazz program. We have contemporary Christian. We have classic rock. In addition to indie, even though that's our format, we do all these other things.
Yes.
So, but I think there's absolutely opportunity for, having a live music night and having like you said, open mic night, and doing some, podcasts with live material to add to the mix.
No, for sure. And that's definitely been at the top of my head. I just haven't got a chance to put it into action yet, but I definitely know that we have students that are ready and willing and want to be involved in that stuff, and community will obviously, hopefully, reciprocate that energy.
Right.
And so the more service that we can provide, I think that the more service that will attract to 88.3 as well, or mutual benefit, if that makes sense.
Great. So now the softball stuff, we're going to get to know Alex a little bit more. You mentioned at the start of this podcast that you're a hip hop head. Self-confess. So what are some of those influences for you? What are some musical artists that really resonate for you? And
so growing up, my dad probably let me listen to stuff that I shouldn't listen to. I snitched on him, and I'm fine with that. But it also got me into what I'm into. As a kid, I was into Jay-Z, the Nas's, Outkast, DMX. Those were probably like the biggest, Jadakiss, Dipset, the biggest influences musically for me. As I got older and developed more of my own individualized taste, right now I listen to artists like J. Cole, Nipsey Hussle, an artist by the name of Dave East. Those are probably like the bigger individuals and more consumed artists in my rotation. But I also think it's good to branch out. So I listen to a lot of R&B as well. I listen to a lot of old stuff. I listen to a lot of Sam Cooke, a lot of DeBarge, which may come as I've always known who they were, listened to their music. However, my son has developed just a love for DeBarge. So we literally watch documentaries on DeBarge, not because I put it on, because he put it on. But we'll listen to all of their songs, their rotation. I love Switch, Barry White. So really it's three main artists in rotation, hip hop wise, and then just a lot of old 70s music. So that's kind of where I'm at. Yeah, Switch, DeBarge, Sam Cooke. I guess he's pre-70s, but yeah. So that's kind of my.
How can you not like Sam Cooke? The silky voice, man. He's got so prolific.
I had a discussion with one of my classes last week, and they said when they're in a down and out mood, they listen to sad music. And at first I was like, well, why would I listen to sad music when I feel sad? I want to be happy. And then I caught myself doing it, I was listening to a Sam Cooke, and the song is called Sad Mood. Didn't realize I was doing it though, because the song is presented in such a happy manner. But as, as I'm singing the song, I'm like, oh no, this is a sad song. And so I had to tell my class, never mind, I did it too. So they got a kick out of that. And I played the song. They're like, oh no, this is a sad song. So they got me. But yeah, that's kind of where it lies for me.
Nice. We definitely have to talk more hip hop. You know, growing up in Chicago, house was huge in the 80s. That was when I was a teen. And the DJs that I remember, and this probably wouldn't resonate with you unless you know the Chicago market, WBMX and WGCI. They were the ones, and both historically African-American stations, mostly played South Side, West Side. But it was all about, I would say, almost 4 or 5 nights a week. They would have local DJs on there running the show for like 6 hours, and it was just house mixes. So people would play the station live at the club. They wouldn't even have a DJ there. They would just have the station on running. It was a weird time, you know. It was a good time for music.
Beautiful time.
Right? And you didn't have the access that we have now. I mean, that's the privilege that I always try to get across to students today. The access to information and learning about things, totally different. Like, you would have to search around for a hard copy of an album, a CD, or a cassette. And they cost like 12 to 15 bucks in the store. You didn't have that kind of money. So people would dupe stuff. Right. But it's, you know, take advantage. What I always tell people, you want to learn about the history of music, you can do that now really easily.
Really easy.
Really easy.
Yeah. No, and sorry to hit your point, you kind of made me think about an old college station in New York, and I forget the name of the station. Forgive me, but 2 of the talents were Stretch and Bobbito, and they were on this indie music college station. And if it wasn't for them, a lot of hip hop artists that made it big and are huge today wouldn't be anywhere close to where they are. And so while it's a different day and age, I think that college radio, indie radio still has that same ability to not only assist and help artists, but even break artists. And I think that those artists are and will be appreciative of that. And so I look forward to hearing, and it's already happened, right? WLFC has been around since the early 70s, but to hear more conversation about our student staff now. Oh yeah, so-and-so at 88.3 WLFC was the first one to play my record back in 2021, so on and so forth. And so just wanted to you kind of took me down that route. But
and just understanding the genre too. I mean, indie kind of, I think it gets lumped in with alternative and college music, those kind of 3 terms. Definitely. But to me, indie, obviously its roots, independent, was always about promoting local artists, regardless of the genre. Where I got introduced in the 90s to more hip hop artists that were up and coming was through alternative stations.
Yes.
Because they would play things like, I remember the first time I heard Ice-T's Body Count. It was on an alternative radio station. It was not on, a hip hop station. So I think that is the promise too. And I think people kind of conflate indie, the word, with like, I don't want to say this, but I would say typically like punk, post-punk, mostly like, disaffected white youth music, right?
I would definitely agree with you.
Right. And I think it's much broader than that. And I think that's what we offer at the station is much broader than that.
No, for sure. And we offer everything, whatever you want to hear, we have it for you, and we'll continue to have it. So no, we offer a diverse collection of not only music, but vibes in general, as broad as that sounds. You're going to get a vibe when you listen to us or when you talk to us or call in, and you're going to get a good vibe. So 88.3 WLFC represents Findlay, the university, and the community. And I think we just want to continue to do that and do it more. So, yeah. Yeah,
and definitely, as you said earlier, you can access it anywhere too with the app now. Yes. I always encourage students, I'm like, just as a project, listen to it on 1 hour, choose an hour, the same hour over 5 days, and hear the voice of who's playing that music in their choices, right?
Yes, definitely.
Yeah, definitely. So we're almost here at the time. Just 2 other questions for you. Students who are coming into college now, you're still sort of a student. You're wrapping up at kind of the final end of being a student there as a PhD student, although I would argue we never stop being students. What's your advice to somebody coming in as an undergraduate, not necessarily just about the station and comm, but just as a person? What's your advice?
Be open, and as simple as that is, just be open, and try as many things as you can. Because in your time in college, it's going to go quick. It's going to go very quick, even though it doesn't seem like that. But be open, try everything. I remember I was getting ready to graduate with my bachelor's, and I looked back on, why did I not get into the television news in school? I did an internship, which got me into the field, but I would have much rather been able to develop my own package in school. It's right there. I walk about 10 minutes to get to the studio. Why would I not utilize that? And so that was kind of, I mean, in a couple different instances like that, but try everything while you're here. There's so many opportunities. There's so many things to get involved in: clubs, organizations, programs, so many different people to talk to from different walks of life, different backgrounds. And so the more that you try, the more that you're open to, I think it'll help shape you as an individual throughout life, but also hopefully prohibit you from looking back on, crap, I wish I would have tried that, or have any type of regrets. And so be open and try everything.
Good advice. Good advice. So if students want to get a hold of you, would you say the best way is just your email, and that's alexander.davis@finley.edu, correct?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I would encourage you all to follow up with Professor Davis if you have additional questions. And I would also encourage you to check out this episode and all the other Ask the Professor episodes, as well as a lot of other content on UF TV. Real easy to find. Please like and subscribe to our channel on UF TV. Multiple ways to get there. Either just type it into the search engine on the campus main site, or just go to YouTube and type in UF TV. It'll pull up our program. So thanks for joining us today, and hope to see you all again.